Hello, my name is Aaron Lockhart with KodeKloud, and today we're bringing you a Linux installation walkthrough. We'll be demonstrating how to install Kali Linux as a virtual machine under Windows using VirtualBox. Kali Linux is a popular Linux distribution with security professionals, and the steps to install it as a virtual machine are going to be very similar to what it takes to install other popular Linux distributions as virtual machines. We'll use VirtualBox from Oracle, which is free. However, if you want to use VMware, the steps would be nearly identical. Also, we're doing this demonstration on Windows, but if you're using Mac OS X, installing VirtualBox should still be similar, and once you're inside of VirtualBox, everything would be the same. We'll also use another free tool during our easy mode installation, and that's 7-zip. I'll start out by showing you where to go to get VirtualBox, 7-zip, and our Kali Linux installation media. Let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do is get a browser open, and we're going to get all of our tools downloaded first. So the first place we're going to want to go is virtualbox.org. And we'll have the nice big download VirtualBox 6.1 button. We'll click on that. So since we're using a Windows host, we'll click on the Windows hosts button. If you're using Mac OS X, you'll click on the OS X host button. So we're doing Windows hosts, and we'll let that download. Next up, we're going to want 7-zip, and you can get that from number 7-zip.org. Okay, and we're going to use the Windows installer for this. 64-bit. All right, and now we're going to head to Kali, Kali.org. All right, and we'll be greeted with a nice download button here. And there are many options for Kali Linux, a bit different use cases. The one we're going to use first, what I'll refer to as kind of the easy mode, is the one for virtual machines. So we'll click on that. And we're going to do 64-bit. You can choose 32-bit if that fits what you're doing. We'll hit this little download button here. It's going to be about 2.4 gigabytes for the download. Right. We're going to let that download, and once that finishes, we'll be right back. Right, and our Kali Linux virtual machine file has finished downloading. So I will give this a show in folder. So we have our VirtualBox installer, our 7-zip installer, and our Kali Linux package, 7-zip package here that contains the virtual machine files. So first up, let's go ahead and install 7-zip. We'll just go ahead and use the default install option. Installs pretty quickly. And that should give us here on Windows a context menu when we right-click. So we're going to right-click our Kali Linux package. We'll go to 7-zip, and I'm just going to do the extract to with the archive name option here. That's going to extract it to my same downloads folder. You can choose a different location for any of these things if you would like to, or you can just kind of use the defaults. Whatever will be easier. So now that we have that folder, we can take a look inside of it. That shows us that we have a VBox file, which is the virtual machine file for VirtualBox that defines the virtual machine. And we have a VDI file, about 11.5 gigabytes worth, and that is the hard disk image for the virtual machine. And the fine folks at Kali have gone ahead and installed this in that virtual disk. And all of the configuration is already done for you. This is why I call it easy mode. We'll take a look at something a little more advanced after we do easy mode. But next up, let's go back and install VirtualBox. And for VirtualBox, all you have to worry about are the default options. Just clicking next. I prefer not to have the desktop shortcut or the quick launch icon. You can have them if you want to. But we will proceed with the installation. And it does warn you that it is going to knock out your network connection for just a moment while it sets up its networking. It should come back very quickly. So now we'll do start Oracle VM VirtualBox. Right. Go ahead and get rid of our downloads folder here. So you can see that I've had this set up before. I have a pre-existing virtual machine in there that it picks up. VirtualBox is pretty nice about that. So what we're going to do for our easy mode installation is go to the menu at the top, click Machine, and then we're going to click Add with the plus mark next to it. And for this, we're going to want to give it the location that we extracted our Kali Linux 7-zip package to. So wherever that might be for you, here it is for me. And it's going to show this VirtualBox machine image for you right here. That was that VBox file. And you'll hit Open. Right? And that has a pre-set up machine. We can take a look at the options for it. It's going to have, by default, 2 gigs of RAM. It's going to use 2 processors if they're available, or processing threads. Say if you have a hyper-threaded CPU. It's going to have your basic display. It's going to have an optical drive. And it's going to have the Kali Linux hard drive image already mapped to your SATA port 0. It's going to pick up your network adapter, sound, USB, other things. And here in this description, some very important information, not only the Kali Linux homepage and documentation, but credentials. The default user is Kali, and the default password is also Kali, K-A-L-I. So you could edit these settings if you wanted to, but we're doing this easy mode, so we're going to go ahead and click Start. It may take just a second, depending on your machine speed. Go ahead and maximize this window here. And we'll be greeted with the grub bootloader, and that's going to, we don't do anything, it's going to load the initial option, which is the Kali GNU/Linux. And we're going to let it go through its boot process. Doesn't take too long, so now we log in with those default credentials, K-A-L-I, same for the password. And you are in Kali Linux in a virtual machine with network access, free to access all of its useful applications and built-in tools, especially if you're a security person. This would be right up your alley. And that's it. It is that simple for the easy mode. Go ahead and click in the top right, and we can shut this down. We're going to take a look at doing a little bit more advanced installation with it. Say you have some options that you might want to customize, or maybe you want to practice installing it in a virtual machine before you install it on a machine as the primary operating system. So this is the way you would do that, installed as a primary operating system. We're just going to target the virtual machine that we're going to create. So this is a little bit more advanced, open up some options for you. So we're going to want to go back to our Kali Linux downloads. That would again be at kali.org. And we're going to choose the bare metal option. Bare metal, if you're not familiar with that term, means to install it directly on your hardware, not as a virtual machine. So we'll get the installer, again the 64-bit version, and it's a little bit larger than the virtual machine image. We're going to go ahead and download that. And I will be respectful of your time and come back to this whenever it has finished downloading. All right, so our file has finished downloading, and it is an ISO file. So that is a disk image, like a CD-ROM image. So if you're going to install this on a bare metal machine, you would go ahead and either burn it to a CD or DVD in this case, since the disk image is kind of large. So you'd burn it to a DVD to boot off of, or you would use a utility to extract it to a flash drive and set that up to be bootable. We're not going to go over those things just yet. We're still going to be targeting a virtual machine, but those would be options that would be available to you with this image. So let's go ahead and go back to VirtualBox. All right, and this time we're going to create a new machine for this. So we're going to click New, And this is going to give us some options here. So first, we're going to give it a name. You can really name it anything. This is the name of your virtual machine as far as VirtualBox is concerned. So I'm just going to call it Kali. And you're going to need to select a machine folder. And I have one where I like to store my VMs. It's going to be in here. You can select any location that you would like for that, whatever works well for you. If you go ahead and name it Kali Linux, it'll pick it up as type Linux. Otherwise, you can select Linux from here. And under version, we're going to do, if you did the 64-bit version, we're going to choose Debian 64. If you did the 32-bit version, of course, you would choose 32-bit. Right? And we can customize how much RAM it has access to. You'll want to vary this based on what you have available for your system. You want to make sure to give your copy of Windows in the background enough resources to continue running smoothly, so you don't want to turn things up too high, get out of this green area. I'm going to stay well within the green area here, and I'm going to give it 8 gigs of RAM out of the 32 that's available on the system. Right, and we're going to create a virtual hard disk. We're going to use a new installation here, so we'll click Create. You can name it anything you want. I'm just going to leave it as kalilinux.vdi. Right, you can choose a different type. There are various reasons why you might want to choose some of the different types here. For our purpose, we're going to stick with VDI, the VirtualBox disk image. Right, you can see over here you have storage on physical hard disk. You have dynamically allocated or fixed size. So fixed size is going to go ahead and create a file that is the same size as we want to make the hard drive. By default, that's 8 gigabytes. Say we want to give it a little bit more room in case we want to start installing more packages once we get into our Linux machine or downloading other things for it. So in this case, if we did fixed size, it would create a 20 gigabyte file on our C drive and go ahead and take up all that space at once. If we leave it on dynamically allocated, it's going to create a special type of disk file to represent the hard disk, and that's going to grow as we need it to up to that maximum 20 gigabyte size that we're setting here. It's going to start out smaller, so if you're wanting to save some space and be able to grow later, this is a good option to leave it on. If you want to go ahead and allocate that size and know that you have that fixed size available, you can go ahead and do fixed size. So we're going to do create. And there are a few other settings that we're going to adjust before we get into it. So we'll click settings. All right, so you've got your general settings here. Advanced, you can do a bidirectional keyboard. That means you could copy things out of your Kali Linux VM into Windows, or copy it from your Windows keyboard over to your Kali Linux if you wanted to do that. All right, we've got it with our 8 gigs of RAM. Leave everything there. Default. Processors. So you can leave it at 1. That's only going to allow it to have 1 thread to operate in. It's not going to be very snappy and responsive. The more you can give it, I recommend at least 2. Kali Linux recommends at least 2. But the more you give it, the more responsive it's going to be. Again, do not get out of the green area. So I'm going to go ahead and give it 8. So we have a good snappy experience here. 8 out of 16 on this machine. All right, don't need to change anything else in here. Storage is your next stop. You can see that you have your hard drive image that you created attached to your primary SATA controller. All right, and what we're concerned with here is under controller IDE and this little CD-ROM looking icon here. I'm going to click on that, and that's for our optical drive. So that's where we're going to select our disk image file, the ISO that we downloaded. So you'll click this little CD icon over here. You're going to choose a disk file. And that's going to be the Kali Linux installer, this disk image file that we downloaded. So that's going to be, just as far as the machine's concerned, that is a DVD inside of a DVD drive. Right, network. would be our next stop. You can set up multiple adapters if you want to. By default, we're just going to have one. You can have it attached to NAT. You can bridge it, internal network only, whatever fits your configuration that you want to do. Usually select bridged and bridge it to my main network adapter. All right, so that should be the last thing that we really need to set up as far as basics go. So we'll tell it OK. We can see our layout here. So we'll go ahead and click Start. And give it a moment to start the virtual machine. And it's going to boot from its CD-ROM drive. We're going to choose Graphical Install. You've got a text-based install that you can do. You've got some advanced options you could go through. We're just going to choose the basic graphical install. Don't worry about any errors you might see here. It's nothing that's going to cause a problem. So now you get to select a language. Quite an extensive selection of languages. Choose the one you're most comfortable with. I, of course, will choose English in this case. Your country that you live in, it's going to help you out with selecting time zones and your system locale. So match that accordingly. I'll leave it as default. I'll leave it on United States. Choosing your keyboard layout. It's going to be very important so that it matches the one that's on your actual physical keyboard for the real computer that this is running on. Mine is the default American English layout. Take that. It's going to do a little bit of hardware detection for you. So again, this is like it would be if you were installing it on a bare metal machine, or if you wanted to install Kali Linux in a VM and you want some of these additional configuration options where you want to customize some things. Right, so it's detecting network hardware, kind of getting things set up with auto configuration. It's going to take care of a lot of these steps for you. You can further customize it once you get it installed, of course. All right, so a host name. This is going to be the computer's name. Default, it's going to be Kali, and I'm going to leave that just kind of as it is. Next thing it's going to ask you for is a domain name. That's part of the internet address to the right of the host name. If you actually have one of these, say you're using it inside of your organization, your enterprise, you'll know what to set there, or you can talk to your network admin and they can let you know. If you're at home, you can feel free to just make something up. If you want it to be able to talk to all the other computers on your network pretty easily by host name, you'd want to make sure they're all the same. You're also free to leave this blank, and I'm going to leave that blank. All right, so the next thing it's going to want you to do is set up a user account, and that's going to be your regular user account so that you are not logging in as root, which is something we always want to avoid, running everything as root. So we're going to make a new user. You can give that username the user any name you want. I'm going to give it KodeKloud because we are with KodeKloud. This is going to want the full name. If you're John Smith, you are going to type John Smith there. Click continue. Now you're actually giving the username. Before, it was the user's name, like the real name of the user. Now, username, and they can be different. I'm going to make mine the same. It's going to be KodeKloud. This is going to be what you type when you go to log in. Right. And next, passwords. Always follow your good, secure password rules that it reminds you of here. Mixture of letters, numbers, punctuation. They recommend to change it regular intervals. All right, so you're going to have to verify it. Make sure you've typed it correctly. You can do show password in the clear to make it not obfuscate the password. Just make sure you've typed it correctly. All right, so it's going to set up your clock. It's going to ask you for your time zone. Mine are limited to the ones that are in the United States. Yours may be different than what you see here, depending on which country you chose. I'm just going to leave it at the default here. Just know that it's available and it's important to configure the right time on a system. All right, so next is disk partitioning. And you've got a few options here. They basically break down into two categories. There are the guided options, and then there's manual. If you know what you're doing, you can definitely choose manual and set it up to your heart's content and your particular application for you, whatever works best. From the guided, you can just do a regular setup. You can have it use the entire disk and set up logical volume management if that's your preference. You can set up an encrypted partition and logical volume management. A little bit more secure, a little bit more advanced if you know what you're doing there. For the purpose of this demonstration, we're just going to use the regular guided option with the entire disk. And it's going to ask you which disk you want it on. If you're installing this on, say, a bare metal system that has more than one disk, you'll want to make sure you're choosing the correct disk. Or if you added more than one hard drive to your virtual machine, which you can do, we did not, you would choose the correct one. So we've only got one here, so we'll go ahead and click continue. All right, and then it's going to ask you how you want your partitioning scheme. So all files in one partition, recommended for new users. You can have a separate partition for the /home directory, if you want to do that. You can also have separate /home, /var, and /tmp partitions. There are various reasons to engage in all of those things, and I encourage you to learn more about why you would want to do that. But for now, we're going to do all files in one partition, recommended for new users. It's going to give you an overview of what's going on here. It shows us that it's going to create partition number 1 as a primary partition. In this case, it's going to be about 20 gigs in size, and we're going to format it, and it's going to be an ext4 file system, and its mount point is going to be /. That's the root of everything in Linux, if you don't know. And it's going to create us another one. It's going to be a logical partition, 1 gigabyte, and it's going to be swap space, virtual memory space, where it'll write things to the hard drive if it runs out of RAM or needs to go to sleep. You can always edit these settings, but we're going to do finish partitioning and write changes to disk. We're going to say that we're happy with everything that's here for this default. All right, and it's going to make sure you really want to do this, because if you had anything on the disk, it's going to destroy data that already exists on it. It just wants to make sure that you're really laying out everything the way you want it. So we'll tell it yes. So now it's going to install the base system, and this doesn't generally take too long. I mean, that's going to depend on the speed of your machine and how much you dedicated in terms of processing resources to this virtual machine to be able to have access to. Base system does not take really all that long to install. It's giving you things like your kernel and your basic command line login and some really basic tools that you need. You see App Armor there. It's an advanced security tool to help manage roles on the system. And it's configuring some of those things, configuring the package manager, that's apt. So now it's going to give us some things that we can install beyond the core system. So use the default selections below. We'll install Kali Linux with its standard desktop environment and the default tools. Of course, you can customize that. So by default, it uses the desktop environment XFCE. You can choose different ones. GNOME, KDE Plasma. That is really a matter of preference. It is all up to you. If you have not really delved into Linux, especially in the graphical mode before, it's fine to leave it as XFCE. Personally, it's one of my favorite environments. I run it on my graphical Linux systems that I build. It's lightweight, it stays out of your way, and if you are familiar with Windows, it's going to have kind of a familiar feel to it. All right, and then you can do a collection of tools if you want it. The top 10 most popular tools from Kali Linux, these are going to be a lot of security-based tools, penetration testing tools, kind of the things that people go after Kali Linux for. And of course, some default recommended tools, the same that you would find in a live CD system or that virtual machine image that we used for easy mode. So we're going to leave everything alone here and click continue. And it's going to install 2,201 packages as of the installation medium that I am using. The speed of this process, again, is going to depend on the speed of your machine and what kind of processing resources you dedicated to use with this virtual machine. So it's going to unpack all of those packages. It shouldn't take very long on my machine, but again, I'm going to be respectful of your time like I did with the downloads. So I'll be back to you whenever this is finished. You can kind of watch it if you're installing along with me. Watch it on your own machine. Probably won't be able to catch a lot of the package names that it's installing. Some of them you'll see, a lot of them may not make sense to you. Some of them may be unfamiliar to you, even if you are a long-term Linux user. You can kind of delve into what packages are installed on the machine once it gets up and going. But we'll be right back once it finishes installing these packages. All right, we've installed all of our packages. The last thing to do is to install the grub bootloader. That's what's going to allow Linux to be booted now that it's installed. So we'll just say yes in this case, and we'll select this drive. It's the only drive that we have. Let it install grub. It's going to finalize your installation. So we're going to let that happen. I'll be right back when that finishes. Right, you'll see a message when it's done saying that the installation is complete. It'll tell you to remove the boot medium. So if you're on an actual machine installing this on the bare metal, you'll pull out your thumb drive or you'll take out the CD or make sure it's not booting to that medium. The virtual machine environment we're in is smart, so it's going to automatically pull it out. So you'll just click continue. And when it reboots itself, it's going to boot into your new Kali Linux installation. Give it just a moment to come up. You'll give it the username that you created. Mine was KodeKloud. And you'll log in, and you are in Kali Linux and ready to go to set it up further and customize it as you choose or just to use it as is. So we're going to go ahead and shut down in this case because we are done as far as it is concerned for the installation in the virtual machine environment. Right. Right, so thank you for joining us for our Linux installation walkthrough. I'm going to go through the resources that we used right quick so you have the URLs. So that was virtualbox.org, 7zip.org, Kali.org. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/KodeKloud for more Linux and DevOps videos, tips, and tricks, and also to visit us at KodeKloud.com to check out our selection of courses and further your DevOps career. I'm Aaron Lockhart for KodeKloud. Thank you.